Hi, everybody. It's nice to see. We already have lots of great faces here, lots of lovely names and interesting people, and we're going to get to know you a little bit better in a second. But first, I wanted to welcome you. This is a CFO Connect virtual Ask Me Anything. We've done a few of these now, and they're pretty good fun. So I think we're going to have a great time tonight. I'm going to introduce our special guest, who, of course, you can see on the screen. And in fact, she's going to introduce herself and tell us all about Mews. And then I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to turn it over to you because it is an Ask Me Anything, and we want to know what you want to know from Pavla. But just while we give the latecomers a chance to join us, we always like to start by getting to know the audience a bit better. And so tonight, what I would love to know is where you are and what your role is in the company that you represent. Because, we need to know who we're talking to. Are we mostly CFOs? Do we have other finance roles? Have we got accountants? Have we got controllers? And then maybe we've got CEOs, marketing people like me. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Patrick. I work on content at both CFO Connect and Spendesk, and I'll introduce both of those in a moment. But yes, please, now is the time. Find the chat feature, which should be on the right, usually, of your screen, and just tell us where you are and what your role is. So straight away, we've got Anna, who I know because she's in the CFO Connect team. She's tuning in from Grenoble, France. And I happen to know that Anna is also in marketing and communications like me. James from London, Senior Finance Manager. Fantastic. I think you're in the right place. I hear it was fairly nice weather in London today. It's been a little kind of grey and not great in Paris, although not too cold for a change. So I heard London was slightly better, just in time for Tier 3. And we have Martin, CFO in Prague. Welcome, Martin. Gia in Paris, head of corporate finance. Cool. Okay, so already we've got Anna and I are outnumbered. We're two marketing people, but most of the audience is finance, which is, I think, what we expected and is perfect. We have Nicolas in Madrid, and he's an FP&A manager. Again, welcome everybody. If I forget to welcome you, you are welcome. We'll give it maybe a couple more minutes, just see if we have a few more people. I know there are other people there. They just haven't told us who they are and what they do yet and where they're from. The other thing, while we wait, I'm going to give you some housekeeping as well. So clearly, a few people at least have found the chat. That's fantastic. Feel free to use the chat throughout the whole AMA. But if you want to ask questions, because that is the point of this conversation, is for you to ask questions, we encourage you to use the questions tab, which is sort of self-explanatory, but the main reason is just that the chat can sometimes go off in funny areas and we miss questions. But if you put them in the questions tab, we shouldn't miss them. That would be a real error on my part. So yeah, but do feel free to use the chat, especially if you want to react to something that Pavla says. Maybe you want you have a follow-up. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and make sure that we're kind of going back and forth as much as possible. Anything else you need to know? As I said, I'm going to start by asking a few questions that I have pre-prepared, and then we really want to hear your questions for Pavla. And as far as I know, I mean, the title is Ask Me Anything. As far as I know, you're really allowed to ask anything. So I hope. I mean, let's keep it finance related, business related. Yeah, but I'm always interested to know what finance people want to know from CFOs and leaders. All right, I say we begin. If there's anybody who at the very last minute wants to tell us who they are and where they're from, excuse me, and their role, now's your chance. But I'm going to begin the introduction. So it's a virtual CFO Connect Ask Me Anything. We're really excited and lucky to have Pavla here. As I said, she's going to introduce herself in just a moment. But first, I need to tell you about CFO Connect. I think most of you will already know we are building the go-to community and resource hub for finance leaders. And specifically in fast-growing companies, we're really keen to put together resources and to have events like these that focus on the finance team as a driver of growth. So obviously that means startups and scale ups. It doesn't have to mean that, but as long as we're thinking growth, we're thinking entrepreneurship. That's what we're really keen on. CFO Connect is, of course, brought to you by Spendesk, the other company that I work for. This is not a pitch, just letting you know that we are a spend management solution. It's a mixture of expense reports, company cards, virtual cards, and we're very easy to find, so I don't have to tell you any more about it. The one last thing I do want to tell you about, though, which we're very excited about, is our brand new podcast, which is called CFO Yeah. And if you enjoy this AMA, you're going to love the podcast because it's a very similar format. We find and bring in really great CFOs and finance leaders from big companies that you know, and we ask them questions. So far, we've spoken to the CFO of Zapier, the CFO of Notion, a really interesting company named Striver that I know some of you will know, but maybe not everybody. They do virtual reality. And the number one fitness app in the world, Fit. And there's more to come. So I really encourage you. You know where to find podcasts. Find this one. And if you don't know, Anna shared a link in the chat right now for cfoconnect.eu. The podcast is right there. You can't miss it. And she shared a link to the podcast itself. So that's helpful. Cool. So that's it from me, at least for now. I'm going to hand it over to Pavla. And if you don't mind, Pavla, tell us about yourself, maybe a bit about your finance background, and also then a bit about Mews.
Yeah, of course. So hi, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure. My name is Pavla. I'm CFO at Mews. I started with Mews back in 2016, 4 years ago now. It feels short. Well, last year feels long due to COVID, but in general, it was super fast 4 years. Back then, we used to have 15 employees, 3 small entities, around 80 customers, around, I would say, 20 countries around the world. Well, in these 4 years, we grew up to 250 employees today. It was 420 before COVID. 11 legal entities, over 1,800 customers in over 60 countries. So pretty rapid growth we have behind us. In terms of myself and my background, prior joining Mews, I spent 7 years in hospitality. I went through really any hotel-related role, probably you can imagine, started on the reception. I was doing analytics, partially revenue management as well, and then financial controlling in one of the product clusters that I went for, or went to try a corporate world for a while as well. I worked for ING Insurance. I worked for Medtronic medical devices, and then for a while I worked in Espresso. So that was really valuable experience, but I was still missing that startup vibe or that hotel, more operational vibe. So then when I got a chance to join Mews, it was just a love on the first sight, and it still is until today. In terms of Mews, we are a property management system. So we provide a tool, a software for hotels, hostels, apartments, basically any accommodation provider out there. The main point of the platform really is to automate the usual admin work that you can imagine. We believe that technologies should enable hotels and hostels to take care of the guest and not take care of the admin, which is kind of also the main idea which we have in Mews finance team as such, where we're trying to ditch any manual work that we might be doing or we're trying to not to do. It's of course not 100% possible, but like I think from the most part, we are covering that and really be good business partners for the business. Finance team as of today is 30 people. 15 is related to typical financial operations that you can imagine. So accounting, controlling, tax, treasury, and the other half, the other 15 is more what you wouldn't maybe expect. We have risk team, we have business operations, so we're taking care of any analytics and automation and systems in the company as well. We have a small M&A team too, and also part of it, or I'm also in charge of the legal team, partially, or within the company.
30. That's a lot.
30. Yeah, yeah. I always feel guilty that it's a big team, and then because I'm just, I would rather have a smaller team and automate everything, of course. But yeah, it's 11 entities. It's a super fast growth. Last year, pre-COVID, we expanded to 7 countries. Went locally into 7. Just had all of these offices newly opened, so that was a lot that we had to do. And we're just trying to achieve real-time reporting and real-time accounting. That's kind of my dream. Everybody is more or less laughing, but I believe that you don't need monthly closures. So we're trying to report everything real-time, what is possible, of course, which also requires daily reconciliations, daily processes, just basically continuous booking, right? So that's part of our daily routine as well.
Sorry, I was writing down a question so that I don't forget it for later, because that's really, really interesting, that idea of real-time closing. But first, I had, this may be a silly question, so please tell me if it is, but I'm interested to know whether you think of Mews more as a SaaS company or as a hospitality company. And also, attached to that, whether the finance challenges align more with one or the other.
Yeah, I think it aligns more with a SaaS company. The whole idea of Mews really is, or was created by hoteliers ourselves. Like, big part of the company are former hoteliers. The main idea is really to fix the founder's problem of long queues on the reception. And Richard was building a hotel in Prague, and that was one of his main issues, that he didn't want to have any reception. So he was looking for an app for the guests where they would be able to check in online, check out online, and do everything themselves, which wasn't possible back at that time. And that led to creation and establishment of Mews. Today, we are also working on an interesting project, Space Time, what we would like to allow, basically enable the system to also handle not only hotel reservations, but basically any bookings in any time. So we're looking at ways how to enable hourly reservations. So imagine parking spots or storage boxes, meeting rooms, co-working spaces. All of that, we believe that the system is robust enough to allow. So we might be going away from hospitality, of course, not completely, but we might be also going to different industries. So that's where I think it's more SaaS, but it's not only SaaS, we also process payments. So our business model is based 50% on SaaS fees, where we invoice the customers basically on typical monthly fixed fees that you can imagine. And then half of it is based on payments. So that's commission-based revenue, depending on the payments volumes that are being processed by hotels.
Does that kind of diversity of revenue streams, I mean, obviously that in my head, I'm picturing something that could be relatively difficult to manage, but equally if the more diverse you have your revenue streams, perhaps the safer you are during crisis periods and when things get interesting?
Yeah, depends what kind of crisis, right? So I guess nobody was really expecting or planning on COVID crisis when thinking about the business model back in 2012. So partially, we were lucky that we are not only based on commission revenues, but also have the SaaS part, which kind of saved us through this time. But of course, the commission-based revenue basically, dropped to almost zero back in March, April. So that's where we had to replan and basically rebuild partially also the structure of the company and come up with a different direction.
Well, my next question was going to be simply how these last kind of 9-ish months have been. I can guess for the overall hospitality industry, I can guess it's been incredibly tough. But what
Yeah.
about specifically for Mews?
Yeah, it was tough. So in the end of March, we figured out what's going on. I guess like everybody else, we stopped hiring and we're waiting what's happening. And yeah, and what happened is that occupancies went down to almost zero, right? So, which means that also our merchant streams went down to zero. Yeah, like summer was better. We all know that, slightly, but like we got to around 50% of the market in previous years. So much better than zero, but still not perfect. And now we are around 20-30% of the market, and yeah, let's see what happens then. Like for us, it meant that we just had to replant everything, right? We just had to, like everybody, throw out the budgets that we had out of the window and start planning again. And then replan, and then replan, and then replan again. And just came up with a safe plan. And for us, it meant a path to profitability. So basically analyzing everything, every single cost, looking at savings, looking at optimizations. We also decided to centralize because during 2019, we opened all of these local offices where it was very uncertain that we will get the business which we were looking for or expanding for. Therefore, we decided that we will have to centralize in the main offices, in the headquarters, which is today in Prague, London, and Amsterdam, and we would have to close all of these local, not entities, but entities we still have, but offices. So that was a big one. And that's basically happening until now. We are also believing that today we can work a lot on our internal processes, spend time on systems and automation, and just a bit more structure, right? When you're growing so fast for quite long, for 4 years, it's not always easy to look at the structure and making sure that everything works in the most efficient way. So we believe that this is a good time to revisit this. So that's what we're working on mainly.
Yeah, and so what have there been some specific positive outcomes of all of this?
Yeah, for sure. One of them, probably continuous planning, I call it. So it's not anymore any budgeting and forecasting. It's just planning, and it's not monthly. It's just continuous. So we're just looking at all the differences basically in real time and tracking everything. And we always have updated plan every single day, basically. So that's one of the things. Second is probably some cash flow analysis and inflows that we always had quite detailed reports on everything. I really love Power BI. And we have a good data structure and the data warehouse, and given we are a tech company, of course, there's some good base in there. But we, for example, started forecasting revenues per customer so that it's super clear. We're analyzing how good they are in basically paying us each month. And then depending on that, we are forecasting how that specific customer will be able to pay in future as well. So that became much more exact than what it was before. But I think even some gaps that we might have maybe in the payments products due to some refunds and chargebacks and just these typical COVID transactions weren't 100% handled in a perfect way. Now I can say they are. So definitely. And we learned how to work from home. We were always quite flexible with this. We were always allowing anybody to work from wherever they want. But I think we were still, enjoying the office and still, we're quite dependent on the office. I can say right now that everybody at home has 1 or 2 monitors and they are happy working from home. Not maybe 100% happy, but definitely happier than before. Yeah.
Cool. And we do have a question specifically about COVID, and it's about projections for 2021. So before I ask that question, I wonder how are you seeing the outlook for at least the first half of 2021?
Yeah, well, our projections are really, we're trying to build the plans in a way so that the metrics are still good, still solid, but we still have some leeway there and some reserves, right? So currently, I can only say that we are waiting for Q1, how the situation happens. But kind of my middle forecast is that we would be keeping it around 30-40% of the market, and then we have projected a slow growth during the end of or during the whole year, basically next year, and that's what we base the plans today. And I'm curious what's going to happen in upcoming 3 months. Really, I think that will be a crucial time.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating with vaccinations just kicking off right now in some countries, obviously not everywhere.
Yeah.
And the kind of the tail of that is actually going to be pretty long, I think. I mean, we're talking about, I'm in France and we've sort of been told unless you are an urgent case, you're not really going to get it until April, May, June.
Yeah.
It takes 5-6 weeks to be effective. So it could be, right into summer when things start going back to normal. Shaib had a question, I guess, about that. He's saying that he or she, I'm sorry, anyway, they would like to know, they've expected disruptions until June, and then they are projecting, and I guess what they would like to know is what happens if in June we are in the same place, things are not, or I guess even if we don't know, like what happens when we get there and we're not sure what's going to happen.
Sorry, I don't get that. I don't understand the question. What are we doing if we don't know what's going to happen?
Yeah, essentially, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, and you can please reply in the chat if I'm misunderstanding the question. But essentially, I think, like many of us, they are expecting things to change in June or begin changing in June, and so they are projecting up until June. What happens if things don't change in June? Or what happens if we don't know if they're going to change in June? I think that's really the question. If it's still uncertain.
Yeah, like for me, it's impossible right now to plan for the whole next year. It's just out of our hands, right? We're like, it's not the usual budgeting when you are focusing on a typical growth rate and you just, play around with the numbers, right? We just don't know what it's going to be. So for me, it's just if you have the assumption that the market is going to stay low, like count with that and just keep it in your projection so that you are safe and you are ready for that. What to do specifically is hard to say. Like in our case, as I said, like we're waiting for Q1 to see what exactly is going to happen. I am projecting a slow increase. So based on that revenue coming in, I can already say whether we will be able to hire more people, have a look at the cost, have a look at the expansion further. But really, it's hard to say today, unfortunately.
We have a question. James, also, I see your question, but we'll come to that shortly because we're sort of talking COVID at the moment, and I think that's fair on this. But we have from Nicholas, who was our FP&A manager from Madrid, and I hope I read this question correctly. But basically, he's saying you were in expansion mode, and now it's restriction mode. Yeah. Next year, expansion mode will hopefully return. So what information systems do you have in place to keep you flexible and to allow you, I guess, to roll with that or to make adjustments depending on what happens?
So are we asking for the tech stack?
I guess so, yeah. Which information system?
Well, information, and where do we get the information? It's always best from everywhere. Where do we put it? It's all Microsoft Excel at this point. To be honest, that's where we plan, and that's where all the magic lies today. Yeah. I am looking for some budgeting systems as well, but there's nothing that would satisfy all my requirements that I have. And we kind of developed our own system within databases and Power BIs and reportings, so that will be all kept there. So, yeah. That's
Yeah.
I guess that answers.
It always comes back to Excel, I think, no
Yeah,
matter who
like
you ask.
we are going through a transition today because back in 2016, with 15 people, 3 entities, it sounded smart to start with 0, which was already cool because of a cloud system and some automations that are possible within it. But with 11 entities, it's just impossible anymore to handle. So we are going for Microsoft Dynamics, and we will go for a full ERP system. I haven't seen the planning in there yet.
I get the feeling that is you are perhaps apprehensive about that, as lots of CFOs are. It will be great when it's working, but until it's working, it might be a headache.
Yeah, I'm worried. I feel like we might be spoiled because 0 or some of the like modern systems that we have today for small and medium businesses, basically, that are unusable for us anymore, or are going to be very soon, have just figured out automation for things that are not figured out by big ERP systems. So I think we might get some features on top of like the more important stuff, like consolidation and exchange rates and everything, but we might lose a lot as well, and that's something that we do not realize until we see everything.
James says, it's not even a question. He says, keep 0 and use Fathom HQ for console. Are you familiar?
Fathom HQ, I was looking at them a year ago, and they didn't support Czech Republic and Czech crowns as a currency. So that was a problem back then. Maybe it's possible today, I'm not sure. But we will still have, like, Czech Republic, it's like the... it's complex. To handle accounting here locally with 0 is complex. We have our own integrations for taxes reporting that do not work for higher volumes. Like intercompany reconciliations, I'm not sure if would be possible in Fathom HQ as well. So there are more blockers, but like James, if you know it's going to work, I'm happy to hear more about that.
James, let us know in the chat, and I'll pass it on. We have another question on COVID from Gia, which is comparing to other players or competitors in the same sector. How did Mews perform? And if better, what would be the key factors you think? Or if worse, I suppose.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have clear numbers from other players or similar companies. I would say we did well in general. We believe that we handled the crisis well and that we weathered the storm. I would say, like in general, PMS market, we are one of the few solutions that are in cloud, that offer online check-in, that offer online checkout as well. And that's generating a lot of interest from the hotels, and even more today. So we are seeing more deals basically coming in just based on this. And that's helping us to innovate even more and drive this. So I would say that helped us, definitely, that we are one of the most modern that there is. And second, I think that we reacted quite fast. And it was drastic in the beginning of COVID, really. Like we had to go down from 400 to 200 people. So it was tough. But I think in the end, it will help us to stand still in the end of the crisis. And I really believe, and the whole company really believes, that we will just get out of the crisis stronger than before it.
And to, I guess, finish up this section, I'm really interested to know just how you see the future of hospitality, or the immediate future. I mean, we've already sort of discussed the next 6 months, but what about the next 2 years?
Yeah, I think it will go through a massive innovation, through massive modernization, and that's what we're trying to do these whole 4 years where we are, right? We believe that the guests should not be waiting lines on the reception. They should not need to wait until, and even the receptionist, I was doing that myself, right? Like clicking and invoicing the customers is such a pain. We believe that this should be just happening itself. And I think in upcoming 2 years, we will definitely get there. And I believe that we have much more modern technology in so many industries. And it feels weird that hospitality is still kind of behind there. But we believe that we can help and fix that. So I think everybody should just have their app when they're going to the hotel. They shouldn't need a key. They should just get to the room when they come to the hotel. They shouldn't need to sign a registration card. All of this can be done online, right? When you want to leave, you should be just able to pay from your cell phone. You shouldn't need to see somebody.
Specifically,
right?
city taxes. City taxes are my favorite ones. You have to pay in cash.
Yeah.
€1.50 or something in cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. City taxes. Yeah. Let's not get it in there.
Great. I have a follow-up from James very quickly, which is that Fathom HQ does multi-currency now. He does consolidation for 4 entities, although inter-country or inter-company, I think, is manual. It says inter-co. I'm sorry.
Inter-company, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. So thanks for that, James. And because of that fantastic feedback, I'll now ask your question, which was regarding payment gateways. So we're pivoting completely. How do you ensure all potential guests are catered for? For example, in China, they use Alipay and maybe some other options. Do you find a drop-off at payment for some hotels that may not accept those different payment options?
Well, like generally, we like there are gaps, of course, and there will be always some local payment types, basically like Alipay in different countries. For example, in Netherlands, we are just launching Ideal because of that. But we're taking care mainly about the credit card processing. So it's the basics. It's the credit cards that you know, as a MasterCard, American Express, and a few others. And we don't necessarily do the local charging. We might though. It is in discussion that we would like to definitely go for these as well to extend the share of the wallet. But it's not yet on the roadmap.
Just a very specific question from me on the way the product is built. Is that something that you would have to take care of yourself, or would you just be looking for intermediaries to like using MasterCard and Visa's networks, the same thing for
Alipay? Yeah, we use Adyen and Stripe really as payment gateways. So basically, we're using their API, and it's an integrated to Mews, to the system, and and then we will see where that will take us in future. But for now, it's Adyen and Stripe mainly.
We have another interesting question from Saeed, and they're specifically saying that the US currency is likely to devalue. Perhaps more generally, do you worry about the fluctuations in different currencies?
Yeah, we do. Not specifically for US dollars, because most of our cash is Czech crowns because of the big development center in Prague, and then euros, basically. So between these two, we are checking the exchange rates, and we are having a look how to mitigate the impact or the risks. But it's hard for us. Like if you are not able to plan a long time ahead, of course this gets complex. So for us, it's not something that we would have a full-time person on or something. It's more that we look at what the development is, how it looks like, and then depending on that, we decide when do we exchange the cash and when do we do the conversions.
Wow. Okay. That was actually, I was going to ask that as a follow-up question. So you would be essentially from time to time trying to time your conversions and the amount of cash that you're holding in each currency to maximize cash, essentially.
Yeah, like for us, the main cash that we are getting in are euros, and then we need the local currencies for the local offices, right? For the outflows, basically. So that's something that we would time. We would be looking at the timing, but there's no huge automation behind it. Really, it's more thought driven, really.
Cool. Okay, I encourage everybody who's listening to keep firing the questions in. But one just came in. You were spared. I was about to ask one of my own, but you've been spared. In uncertain times, asks Nicholas, how do you maintain team morale? I think it's a great question.
Communication. Yeah, communication. So yeah, what we do within the company, every Friday we have a all hands meeting. We call it Mews push, and every employee really connects, and we're having a half an hour chat about what has happened the past week. And I think that's even more important in these uncertain times. And then we have half an hour another meeting that is called Hammer Time, and everybody can ask questions to leadership or anybody else in the company, so that we can get hammered. So that's very, very open environment, I think, and that's very important. We always have one-on-ones, so every person has regular one-on-ones with their managers. We're trying to communicate as much as possible. We even have office hours where we sometimes just connect to work together, but not necessarily chat about anything or something. We use Slack, where all of the channels are really helping with all the communication and just quick answers. So I think that's very important as well. And then the second thing, I think, is being open and transparent about financials, which was super important during the crisis as well. We created Fin Results Slack channel where we post every month how we are doing, how the MRR is doing, what is the payments volumes doing, like different dashboards and reports and financials, including the profits, so that anybody can really look whether we are on the plan. We also share when we are replanning, what are we changing in the plans, whether we are increasing our expectations on the market, or whether we decided that we will maybe hire a couple people and stuff like that. So I think that's important, really, to be transparent. And like most of the companies, really following the channel and tracking it, which makes me happy as well.
I think that's actually a really nice outcome. Obviously, it's been a tough 9 months, but I think the focus that everybody has been able to gain, at least in our company and lots of the companies that we've spoken to, the new focus on financial literacy, on understanding what makes the company go and what makes what tells us that the company's in trouble and what tells us that the company is growing, is really cool. Essentially, everybody suddenly now has an interest in MRR and burn rate and runway and all those kinds of ideas.
Yeah, and I think that's the main purpose of the finance team, right? Like, what else should we be doing? Like, it's not information that we are getting for ourselves. We are getting it for the company. And of course, there will be always people who do not mind that much how it's looking. But if they want to understand it, they should have a chance. So that's why we do this. Like, we even have daily updates, basically. I have a dashboard in Power BI that we're just sending out every single day to a Slack channel, so everybody can subscribe and just have a look and ask questions. And we are really active with the finance team, just answering anything that anybody might want to know. So I think that's an important one.
And Martin's asking specifically whether you've seen any negatives as a result of that. Does that lead to difficult conversations about salaries and where the money's going?
No, like salaries, that's a different topic, probably, and open salaries, closed salaries, and salary bands and things like that. And it's something that we are actually going through right now, and we want to make our salary bands open to everybody, but that will still take a couple months. Other than that, the salaries themselves are closed. Like, we don't have them public with the whole company. But other than that, I must say that I'm more happy than I would be worried, because if there is somebody just looking at, for example, product people are just great. They just see when something is happening in the chart and they just give me a heads up. Hey, Pavla, what's that? Like, what is that increase? How did that happen? or just tell the team. So for us, it's basically alerts that we can have. And given it's on daily basis, it's great that we see it automatically and we can dig into it. And maybe nobody would actually notice anything, right, if it wasn't public. So I think it's only good. Like I've never had any negative experience due to being transparent with the financials.
Great. Well, I'm going to take us in another direction now, because you said right at the beginning that one of your sort of big focuses is automation and getting rid of manual processes, which is something that we're very keen on as well. And so I'm wondering what some of the manual processes that you've gotten rid of are.
Okay. So from the very beginning, I think the first thing that we did is automated expense reports. I think that's easy. That's quite simple. You just establish a tool, and everybody is super happy that they don't need to fill in expense reports, right? And just finance team takes care of it, and that's it. Also, you get rid of delays in the receipt. How to call it? Sorry. Submissions.
Yeah,
exactly. So you know everything immediately when it happens, because everybody just likes to go with their phone and take pictures.
That sounds great.
Right. Well, worst thing is the approval afterwards. So sometimes it might get rejected. So it really depends. But it is much easier than filling some spreadsheets. Second thing, OCR. I think that's quite usual today as well. There are, like, we always say that I often hear we are not typical accounting department. And when somebody says that, they mean we don't do piles of paper, we don't code manually and stuff like that. We don't do that either, but I think it might be more common to actually already have OCR. So I would say that's kind of a classic thing as well, that we have, and that works well. We use Citibank. Actually, it's good to have a global bank when you have 11 entities. And we will be also integrating our accounting software with the bank, so that everything can be done from there and you don't have to log in different systems. We also, but that's our own, like, subscription automation, revenue invoicing automation that we coded ourselves within our product, within Mews. We have our own subscription solution that we then only export and import into Xero each month. What we did not automate until today, which I'm really sorry for our receivables team, is ad hoc invoicing and credit notes and postponements and things like that. And that's something that is really hard to do because there are always some ad hocs, but I'm trying to look for some solutions there as well. What else do we have? Reporting automation, probably, and integrations of the system. We use Bando as ETL tool, so all of the systems within the company, including ticketing software of support, CRM for sales, are all connected through Blendo, and then all that information is basically saved within our data warehouse. And then we are just connecting Excel files, Power BI files, everything to this one data warehouse, so that any analysis that we do, we can just refresh it with one click, and there's no ad hoc analysis happening whatsoever within the team. And I think that helps a lot as well.
Well, I think you more or less answered this already, but you said that your eventual goal is real-time closing. So always having the books closed, essentially. What specifically is preventing that at the moment?
So many things, like intercompany reconciliations and consolidations and exchange rate differences, interests. Like, generally, for a non-finance person to explain this, is that everything that takes you manual work to do, you don't want to do it every day. So then you bulk up all that work and you only do it once a month, and you do it in a monthly closure, right? So that's where all of these activities are coming from. I'm saying that we don't want any monthly closures for 4 years already. Part of the team was laughing. Part of the team is taking it serious now when they know me. But really what we achieved until today is that it got longer. It's not that bad. We are still closing our P&L on 6th working day. including all analysis, and revenues always on first, which I think is solid. But I wish we would get it much faster, but then it means it's all around automation, really.
And a follow-up question from Martin: do you use any software to import receipts or invoices to accounting, or does Xero have any features to read and import receipts?
Well, Xero has HubDoc as their own system. But it's a different system that you have to integrate and pay separately, basically. Back in 2016, there was really HubDoc, but it wasn't yet owned by Xero, and there was Receipt Bank, and there were not that many other possibilities. So we went for Receipt Bank back then. I think today's Spendesk is a good solution as well.
I was gonna say, and Martin would probably fire me if I didn't say that. We do that. You're more than welcome to look into us. Go on.
Yeah, and I think there are more. Xero cannot do that yet, as far as I know. I know that they are working on some AI and some other further automations, but I don't think it is in the system yet.
Cool. Hope that answered the question. I'm sure it did. Okay, well, let's go in another direction. And this time I'm interested to know about more of the challenges from having that global team that you have. What are the specific challenges that you face as a result?
Yeah, like for finance as such, we are based in Prague, and then we also have a couple team members in London. So there are no big challenges, really, to be honest. Like in the beginning, where everybody was Czech, they had to get used to speaking in English in big meetings, which was more like better for them because it forced them to speak if they didn't want to. I learn a bit more. Now it's all fine, right? So like language barrier might be one, but that is it. Then maybe 1 hour time difference, so that sometimes we are on meetings in a wrong time or something. That can happen, of course, but that's pretty much it. Like before COVID, we were traveling a lot as well, basically almost the whole company. I was on the way all the time. Now we figured out that we can just work without it, right? It just works from home, so it doesn't really matter, I would say. You have to be really good with communication. You have to get used to communicating everything that is happening, because like before I was just used to stand in the office and just shout, and I was just like, yeah, now everybody knows. Now it's different. Now I have to think about where to communicate what, and not forget to communicate something and go through written form, which is different. But other than that, I would say it doesn't really matter.
I guess I was wondering as well about things like local regulations, local taxes when you're processing payments, all that sort of thing. That's not really an issue.
Yeah, of course, like regulations, but that's not okay. I was talking about more like people team issues. But if we're looking about going global, then yeah, of course. I think the biggest pain is local accounting services. What we are using currently is that in each country where we are in these 11 entities, we always have local accounting company that is advising us with taxes, helping us with tax submissions and VATs, and with payrolls. That's something that partially we have, because it's just impossible to find one person who would be able to do that in-house in one of the countries that we have. But it would be like a full-time job, I think, for one person. So it's good to have partners in the countries. What is not great is when you have different partners in each country, because then every single entity, you have to be just submitting the payrolls every month and reviewing it every month, and you are just doing it that many times, that many entities you have, obviously. So what we're trying to do now is to consolidate a bit more and find global partners in the countries, but you cannot find one global partner who would be able to do VAT, but also payroll. I figured we were trying to do that, but it doesn't really work, because it always ends up with a local, even if you choose a global partner, I don't know, like somebody from Big Four, let's say, it always ends up with their local partners somewhere, and then they might consolidate that for you, but it's still different people working on it. So we now found like global partners, one separate one for payroll and one separate one for VAT, and we will go this way so that we would have only two basically in all of the countries, but at least only two. And then the second thing is the banking. That's just something that took us a while to figure out. We had local banking solutions in each of the countries. We are also using Revolut, which we like, but their enterprise solution, they don't basically offer like more entities within one account, right? So then you have to have like separated Revoluts per entity. So that wasn't great either. And then we always have some local bank account somewhere, which we had to start the entity. So during last year, we consolidated everything with Citibank, and we are happy with it. It's not the fastest. It's not Revolut. It's not an app. Of course, it's a bank. But we're happy with the services, and we're happy that we are having only one provider. And at least the banking statements are standardized. It's just one software that you look at. It's just, you could just import like bulk statements all together for all of the different entities. So that's really simplifying it.
In terms of FP&A, how kind of granular do you get with your reporting with those? It's 11 entities.
Yeah. So very granular. So for each, we have separated P&L, and then really filters on everything in Power BI. So given the fact that all of the data lies in the same software, everything lies into Zero right now. So again, it's the same format for the database from where it's pulled in. So basically the only thing that is separating each entity is just one column basically that is stating which entity it is, which is then easy to use as a filter in all of the reporting that we have, so that we can introduce all of these different ones. What we're looking at on statutory level, of course, it just, all of the statutory reports that you can imagine, we need to have them per entity. Business-wise, we consolidate it as of today, because for the centralization, it just the P&Ls themselves do not make sense. We just have central teams in Prague, in Amsterdam, in London and New York. Sorry, guys. And so, yeah, it just makes sense to look at the costs from the same perspective. And then revenues might be a different thing. There, we would want to separate it per territory or different segments, basically.
And then are you able to interact as a finance team, or specifically the FP&A people? Are they able to interact with, say, the product people in representing each of those entities? Essentially, what kind of feedback loop do you have between what you find when you do your reporting and what become the company priorities?
Like, I would say the reporting is so open that anybody can really look into that, and everybody is kind of doing it quite often, that we don't have any like regular processes where we would be passing information. Right. I would say it's just standing there for use for everybody, and they are just looking themselves into all different reports. Power BI is just open for access to anybody in the company. So anybody can log in and can have a look how we're doing here or there. And I think product people, they for sure, they know that they can just have a look themselves when they're investigating things. So if they need something, they reach out, but they already have everything in hand they would need from us, basically, and any point of time.
And I suppose again, to use the term financial literacy, they know how to use they not only have the data, but they know how to use it and how it impacts them.
Like most of it, like when it comes to revenues or product usage and the reports that we make, like in this sense, they of course know. When it comes to costs, it might be more complex. So that's something that we would take ourselves, just analyze, maybe post a Slack message to them saying, hey, check out this looks good or bad, or what do you think about it? So that might be more driven by us. But I think the important part is that no one in the company should be afraid really to dig into data. And we're trying to pass it to them in that way so that they really can.
Fantastic. We have been speaking for 55 minutes, just about. So I would encourage, if anybody has a question that they've been holding, now's the time. We don't want to keep Pavla any longer because she told me earlier, before we started, she's been in 10 hours of meetings today. Sometimes it's hard to be the boss. So if there's anything you want to get in, now's your chance. Otherwise, is there anything you think that we should discuss, Pavla, before we say goodbye?
No, I don't think so. I think I said everything I know.
That's all the information there is.
No, if there is anything really from anyone, I'm happy to answer in the Slack group as well. So don't hesitate to reach out if there is
In the
anything.
CFO Connect Slack group. So if you're not a member, you must sign up. Okay, we've got another question from Martin. So let's answer that one. And yeah, that may be it for us. How do you solve the year-end budgets leftovers which belong to specific departments? Do they expire or do they spill over?
I like this question. That's my favorite. So I don't believe in budgets and leftovers. We always replan every month. So if somebody already knows that they're not going to use it, they should give up that cash and give it to somebody else because there's not enough of it to just save it in their pocket. So basically, we are not allowing any leftovers.
I've always loved that concept, that, you know, the idea that you have to use it or lose it, and that somehow everyone in business, and especially in governments and you know, places where it's someone's money.
I know.
You know? Like,
yeah, I know. But then it means that companies are like artificially spending cash in the ends of the years, and then everybody is just trying to spend a little more than what they had, so that next year they get the same amount and not lower. I just believe that if somebody needs more, they should just raise it. They should come if they have a good business case, if it is worth it, if the ROI is worth it. We are happy to change the plans. We are replanning all the time, right? So there's really no reason to have your bucket for a year and keep it. And it should work both ways. You should be able to overspend it, but maybe save if you figure out you don't need it.
yeah. No, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm not the CFO. So I'm glad it makes sense to you as well. All right. I think that has been really fantastic. We've had some great feedback already from Dominique and from James and from Nicholas. I want to thank everybody for asking your questions because they were really helpful. And I thought we were able to talk about some great topics tonight. Before I say goodbye, just remember, if you're not a CFO Connect member and you enjoyed this chat, you probably should be a CFO Connect member. So go to cfoconnect.eu. Check out the podcast. It's new. We need your help. And otherwise, I want to thank you very much, Pavla, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me.
No problem. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.